Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, broadcasting on Channels Television, live from Lagos. A former federal lawmaker in the 7th Assembly, Senator Enang, says at no time did the 7th Assembly amend its standing rules. Speaking in an interview with Channels Television, Senator Enang, who chaired the Committee on Rules and Business in the 7th Assembly, discredited reports that the Senate standing rules in the 7th Assembly ended with that assembly. The Senate has been tangled in controversy as federal lawmakers in the Unity Forum wrote a petition to the Inspector General of Police alleging that some sections of the 2015 Senate rules have been forged by certain senators from the opposition PDP.
To say that the rules book goes with that previous assembly, I think I would be a little reserved in saying yes, or I would better not comment on it. But I want to say that the rules book of every legislature is the business of that legislature. So the rules book of the 8th Senate is the business of the 8th Senate. But it has to be shown that the 8th Senate has taken action on the rule on its own standing orders, that the members themselves must adopt it, or they set up a committee that will look at it and then guide them in what, and then make proposals for amendments. If there is any contention that there was amendment of the rules, then the only evidence that any person can show that the rules were amended is to bring up a few things. One, on what date was the rules amended? Who sponsored the amendment? What were the terms of the motion to amend?
We had reported yesterday that the National Industrial Court had ordered the reinstatement of the 22 council chairmen in Rivers State, but that's not true. On the contrary, the presiding judge, Justice J.T. Agbadu-Fishim, held that, and I quote, "I have listened to the arguments of all the counsel for the parties in this matter. I'm of the view that there is the need to allow all parties to file the necessary processes and put in all the relevant exhibits to support their applications, as well as to react appropriately. Therefore, by the agreement of all counsel in this matter, this case is adjourned to 6/10/2015 for definite hearing of all pending applications accordingly. Hearing notice is to be issued and served on the 5th, 6th, and 7th defendants, copies of which are to be kept in the case file." End of quote. Speaking further on this, the State Attorney General, Emma Aguma, told journalists in Port Harcourt that there was no such judgment or any ruling that favored the sacked local council chairman.
All these stories were dispersed in the National Industrial Court of Nigeria sitting in Goa. Set aside the ruling delivered by the Federal High Court of Port Harcourt on Thursday, the 9th of July. And not only did it set it aside, it reinstated the council chairman whose election had been declared minority by the Federal High Court. I found out absolutely strange because I was in court. No order was set aside. Nobody was reinstated. Nothing was, this is it. This is the receipt for this certified copy. That's the receipt there. That is all that transpired in court. The issue that is set aside in the judgment of the Federal High Court is a lie, is a lie, and is a lie. The issue that ordered the reinstatement of local government chairmen that were removed by reason of that judgment by the court and not by the Rivers State House of Assembly or the governor of Rivers State. The court needs punitive jurisdiction. That's what they call a punitive jurisdiction. When you do something that is not in tandem with a case that is pending before a particular court, the court has the punitive jurisdiction to restore the status quo ante, the situation before you did it.
Key players in population control and humanitarian response have asked the federal government and humanitarian groups in the country to redouble efforts towards the care and resettlement of vulnerable populations resulting from the security crisis in the country. At a forum to mark World Population Day in Abuja, the country representative of the United Nations Population Fund, Ms. Ratizai Ndlovu, said women, girls and children form over 56% of displaced persons in Nigeria, a vulnerable population that needs persistent and fast-tracked intervention. The chairman of the National Population Commission said that coordination in the assistance provided from different quarters and collaboration with relevant humanitarian bodies need to be addressed for maximum impact.
We call on the international community and governments at all levels to redouble efforts to protect the health and rights of women and girls. We must enable women, adolescent girls, and young people to play their full role in peace talks, peace building, and recovery, and to ensure that governments comply with international law and bring perpetrators of sexual violence to justice. By prioritizing health, rights, and the full participation of women, adolescent girls, and young people in public life, we increase our prospects for a more just, stable, and peaceful world.
Every day of the week, somebody somewhere must do something to alleviate the sufferings of these helpless Nigerians. After all, they are not responsible for their fate. They didn't cause the situation or the condition they are in. They are not responsible in any way for it. So we owe them more than lip service.
For the 28th time, the world celebrated Population Day this year, a day set aside by the United Nations to create public awareness on issues of population and development. For 2015, the theme, Vulnerable Population in Emergencies, particularly concerns Nigeria, with a growing number of internally displaced persons in the country. Representatives of the National Population Commission, United Nations Population Fund, and National Emergency Management Agency, among others, met today in Lagos to assess the situation of IDPs and chart a solution to the challenges. Our correspondent, Inni Thompson, reports.
With the world population currently at about 7.3 billion and projected to hit 9.6 billion in 2050, according to the United Nations report, factors that may affect these figures are discussed as often as possible, especially on World Population Celebration Days. The focus for 2015 is on a group of people described as the vulnerable population. Nigeria is not without its share.
In the last 5 years, Nigeria has experienced various dimensions of challenges, from communal clashes, natural disasters, conflicts, and most importantly, violence related to the insurgency by Boko Haram armed groups in the northeast, with women and children majorly challenged.
After recognizing the vulnerables, the discussion shifts to alleviating their suffering, which is a lack of basic needs of life. However, the representative of UNICEF, Mrs. Sharon Oladiji, believes that effective succor will only be experienced after an accurate population data has been generated.
Communities, governments, and donors cannot effectively plan interventions, monitor and evaluate impact of a whole range of social protection programs, including inheritance, child custody, healthy initiatives, especially for the vulnerable populations.
These figures may have already been generated by the National Emergency Management Agency, as Mr. Emenike Umesi, a deputy director, discloses that as of June 2015, the agency recognized 1.4 million displaced persons in the northeast. He paints a picture of some realities in the camp.
You can imagine a man who had a family. By the time he comes back from work, his wife has already made food for him. If they don't do that, he will start shouting from the gate. Now himself, his wife, his children don't know when the next meal will drop. Water, sanitation, and hygiene. You can imagine queuing up as number 40 to bath in the morning.
NEMA and other concerned agencies are asking Nigerians to celebrate this year's Population Day by contributing to the welfare of IDPs in the country. Ini Thompson reporting for Channels Television News.
I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by Bimbola Salu Hundeyin of the National Population Commission, Lagos State. She's here to tell us more about the issue. Welcome to the news at 10.
Thank you.
Now, the theme for this year's World Population Day, vulnerable populations in emergencies. Aren't we all vulnerable in an emergency? So perhaps you can expand. Who is a vulnerable person, or who are the vulnerable groups?
Well, the vulnerable groups or a vulnerable person is a very wide, it has a lot of meanings. You have a lot of people that fall within vulnerability. But in emergencies, or according to the World Health Organization or the United Nations, the UNHCR, we have children, newly born, women, especially lactating, including lactating women, girls, young girls, the elderly, those with serious illnesses like the HIV, and we have homeless people, we have minorities, we have displaced people, we have anybody that is in a position that is kind of defenseless and incapable to actually be what they should be. That is a vulnerable person.
All right. Well, you mentioned internally displaced people. And when we look at the situation in the Northeast, do we actually know how many IDPs there are in Nigeria?
Yes. The IOM, that is the International Organization on Migration, it's a UN agency, together with NEMA, had come up with a figure as of February this year. And they said there are about 1.49 something, about 1.5 million IDPs, yes.
Now, it's going to be challenging in these circumstances to achieve an accurate head count next year. 2016 is the almighty census. And population figures are expected to be updated. So how is this going to be done effectively to make sure that the figures are right?
I must let you know this, that the National Population Commission had been carrying out a lot of preparation towards this census. One, we intend to have a biometric census. With a biometric census, that means everybody can be captured. We also intend to leverage on technology through the use of GPS, GIS, satellite imageries, so that we can capture every household. And then we also know, everybody knows, that census is a capital-intensive project. So it cannot be left to any nation alone, especially developing nations. So we also intend to involve our multinational agencies, the UN agencies, the IMF, the World Bank, the Economic Union, to assist us, all our donor agencies in this. And particularly this time, we need the media. And I'm sure I have my chairman's authority and Mr. President's authority, who is the head of the commission, who is the overall boss of the commission, that channels will play a very vital role in this. We need you to help you sensitize, to help us sensitize the masses, tell them the importance, and that they should cooperate with our people when they come to see them. I must also let the Nigerian nation know this, that we actually have capable hands. Currently, we are carrying out a malaria survey, and we're doing it technologically. We're actually improving on our methods.
All right. Now, development strategies are based on population figures. So that suggests that next year really is critical. How will the Commission work with the nation's economic planners to build and sustain development?
Well, you know, the way we do it, we are a generating commission. We generate data, a data generating commission. We do not do the actual planning. What we do is to generate demographic data, and then we give it to the subject matters. For example, if we generate data on health or on education, we give it to the Ministry of Health or the relevant ministries. And you know, of course, demographic data are used in planning. And that's why successful nations take it as a matter of extreme seriousness, because they're also used for policy decisions, for interventions. And if there are no demographic data, you cannot have demographic dividends. And it will be almost impossible for any nation to grow without demographic data.
All right. Thank you very much for joining me on the news at 10.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I've been speaking with Bimbola Salu Hundeyin, a lawyer and Federal Commissioner in the Lagos office of the National Population Commission. Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria's Consumer Price Index for June rises by 0.2% to 9.2% year on year. That's on Business News. Please stay with us.